If you're just joining us now, this is CBC News live on the corner of Logan Avenue and Danforth Avenue. And you're looking at the memorial that has been growing here since yesterday, of course. This is the site as to where the shooting took place. Many people coming here throughout the day to pay their respects and leave flowers and messages and take a moment to think about some of the victims. I'm Tashauna Reid. Thanks for joining us on this Facebook Live. We'll be taking your questions, so please share your questions, and we'll try to get to as much of them as we can. Now, as I mentioned, we've been here throughout the day since this morning, and this memorial has been growing by the minute. People stopping by continuously, people driving in from all different areas, different neighborhoods, and other cities outside of Toronto to come and pay their respects for the victims who lost their lives. It has been growing quite significantly, and I've had a chance to speak with a number of people in this area. For many people who tuned into our coverage yesterday, this whole section on Danforth Avenue was blocked off, of course, because of the massive police investigation that was happening here. And there was a large number of investigators and, of course, forensic units that had been throughout this area. So much of this section was really a ghost town. No one really could come down, and of course that didn't open up until yesterday evening, and that is when we saw people coming out. And today the big sentiment that we've been hearing is that people say that they want to reclaim their neighborhood, that they feel that this is a great neighborhood. It's typically a vibrant, bustling area of Toronto, Danforth, or Greektown as it's known. And so for that reason, many people said that it was important for them to come down here and to show that this is still a great city and to focus on the good that's still left in the city. So we've been seeing people leaving messages. As you see, another woman here writing a message in chalk. There's been chalk that's been left, a lot of candles as well, flowers, just, you know, every moment. And a lot of important messages, some of them saying, you know, gone but not forgotten. A lot of people saying, you know, Danforth strong. That's been one of the big messages as well that has grown here, and it's actually turned into a hashtag, actually, Danforth strong. That's the message that a lot of people have been leaving. So please let us know if you have any questions. And, you know, we've been hearing from a lot of you sharing your condolences, people from across the country sending their messages as well. And so that, of course, has been appreciated. Even, you know, therapy dogs were here earlier today. But for any of you who are watching, if you can send some questions. We just heard one from Julie McGilvery. Sorry if I got your name wrong. What fundraising has been started for the victims, their families, and the businesses, employees affected? That's a great question. Very quickly after, you'll know that one of the victims that was first identified was 18-year-old Rhys Fallon, and we did see a fundraiser pop up for her. There was a friend of hers that had started a GoFundMe campaign and wanted to start a scholarship in her honor. And Rhys Fallon was a recent graduate of Malvern CI, that's a local high school. She was only 18 years old, and she was accepted to McMaster University. She was supposed to attend the school in the fall to study nursing, and so someone had decided to start a scholarship fund to help her. We've seen a few other campaigns and things, but nothing formal as far as we know. Again, it's still pretty early on in things, but we have seen the community really truly come together to try to support all of those people who have been affected. Also, we of course know that a 10-year-old young girl lost her life. We don't know her identity yet. Her family has not has asked not to release her name at this time, and we do know she's from the Greater Toronto area. But also 13 other people were injured during this shooting attack that took place on Danforth Avenue, and some of those people have been treated in hospital. They have been released. We did get some updates from a number of the different hospitals that were treating people. One said that they had released 6 patients today, which was a good sign, but there are still a number of other people that remain in hospital and are being treated for more serious injuries. But in terms of fundraisers, we are seeing a few things pop up. Wendy, Luke, Brody, you said it looks like a great neighborhood, and it is a great neighborhood. Interestingly enough, I was just here 2 weeks ago with my dad, who's been visiting Canada, and we took pictures right at this very fountain. This is a place where many families come. Kids love to play on the fountain, as you can imagine, and that's exactly what was happening here on Sunday night. The Danforth Strip, if you haven't been to Toronto, as I mentioned, this is known as Greektown, and there are amazing restaurants along this strip, local businesses. We're just standing next to a cafe that serves, gelato, and so many families typically frequent this area. So it's not uncommon for a Sunday evening to be filled with people and children and people of all ages just enjoying the city. It's a very tight-knit community as well. So definitely a great neighborhood. And we've been hearing from people who live in the neighborhood who say, I spoke with one gentleman and he said this is such an unfortunate incident. And he said it's not going to deter him from loving the city and thinking that the city is safe. And he decided to take his children out yesterday as well. So a lot of people have come here with their young kids as well. We've been noticing parents just trying to explain what has happened here. And I know that's a very difficult conversation for many of them to have. Christine Matthews asked, how did he get the gun? Okay, so that's a huge question right now. As we know, the shooter was identified as 29-year-old Faisal Hussein. And that is a big question. How did he get this handgun? Was it legally obtained? Was it illegally obtained? That is a big question we have yet to get answers to. That is something that, of course, we've asked police, we've asked the Special Investigations Unit, and so forth, and that's something that they are trying to find answers to, but as you can imagine, it's still very early in this investigation. And that is one of the big questions, especially because we've been talking about gun violence in this city in particular. We also know that just, within the last few weeks, we've seen an increased presence of police as well, because they've been dealing with this problem of recent shootings across the city. And so they have also asked for increased funding as well. So it is a big issue, but gun control is something that we've been hearing, a discussion that has been happening at all levels of government as well, and that's something we're hearing a lot more about. Of course, we know that Premier Doug Ford also met with Minister Bill Blair and Mayor John Tory just on this, and they said that yesterday in a joint statement from all of them that gun violence and guns will not be tolerated in the city, and that they are pushing to ensure that people who want to obtain guns to do violent things, that will not be accepted. Thank you guys for your questions so far. These have been really insightful. So as you guys can see, there are a number of people here with signs. This is one sign that we've been seeing: love for all, hatred for none. A lot of messages of support. We're hearing from many different communities as well. And I just want to do this question from Oleg, who asked if there's any fresh insight into Hussein's motive. Again, that part of the investigation is ongoing. We know that police did go to his residence. He lives in an area called Thorncliffe Park. And in that particular, at his apartment, his residence where he lived with his parents, I believe some of his siblings, police had removed a number of boxes. They've been going through all of his things, talking with people who knew him. And motive is a big question. I don't think we'll have that answer for a little while because, of course, we know there are so many different threads. But a lot of people here are even asking, why would someone do that? Why would someone bring a gun to a place with the intentions of hurting people? And so that's a big question. We've also heard from his family and what they had to say yesterday. They released a very lengthy statement talking about their son's struggle with mental health issues. They've also talked about the fact that they've tried to get him help through numerous occasions, from therapy to medication, and that all of those attempts had been unsuccessful until this point. So we did hear a bit from his family, and they also shared their condolences for everyone impacted and said that they'll be also mourning those who lost their lives and those who were impacted by this horrible event. Just behind me, there's some tensions. If you're hearing this in the background, there's a little bit of an argument happening, and to be honest, I can't tell you exactly what that is about, but tensions are high in the city, and emotions are also running high. So this is okay, so I think this conversation is not one that we're going to listen to, but as you can see, this person is having a discussion, and now he's talking about Muslims in the community. Not entirely sure what this argument is about, but yeah, this is unfortunate. I'll say that predominantly the message here has been love, it has been peace, people saying that they don't want to see their city turn into a violent place, and they don't believe Toronto is a violent place. People saying that they've been touched by how everyone has come together. A lot of the local businesses opened back up their doors. We saw people sitting on patios today as well, trying to get back to some level of normalcy, but obviously as soon as you talk to people, you know, I was sitting next to a woman and just immediately she started breaking down. A lot of people, very sad. It took time to really sit and think about those who lost their lives. So yeah, a very tough day for many people in this particular community, but of course the city as a whole. Is there anyone other than the family that has confirmed the family's claim of severe mental illness? This comes from Sam George. Again, that investigation is ongoing. We don't have many details. One other thing that also we've been trying to confirm is if the shooter, Faisal Hussein, had any previous interactions with police. So that is another thing that we are also trying to determine. So again, the severe mental illness angle, that's something, of course, we'll be learning a lot more about in the days to come. The family also has asked not to speak any further to media. They did release that statement yesterday, and that was the extent as to how much they wanted to talk. This comes from Fernando Ortiz Hermida. Have you heard anything from authorities about how to avoid a tragedy like this one when it happens again in the city? You know, it's interesting because there have been a number of discussions happening at the municipal level, at the provincial level, and as well as at the federal level. And as I mentioned, there was a meeting between Minister Bill Blair as well as the mayor of the city, John Tory, who's been talking a lot about violence. And we know as well Premier Doug Ford was at that meeting. And today within City Council as well, we heard from Chief Mark Saunders as well, and talking about the issue of gun violence and so forth. And you know, I think it's a multifaceted approach. We've been hearing not only just on things such as banning handguns outright, to changing specific rules and restrictions, but also, you know, the root causes of some of these issues. So people are looking at, should there be more funding for mental health services? What about communities that have other issues and potentially see more issues with gun violence? What are we doing in those communities when it comes to outreach or community services? And so those are all things that have been on the table. We know that the City of Toronto has asked the federal government for help. We know that the Prime Minister has said he will do everything he can. We know they've asked for more funding as well to deal with this problem. And again, this has been an issue that the city has been dealing with, a recent spat of incidents and shootings in the city. This, of course, you know, just happening on Sunday. Again, 13 people were injured and 2 people lost their lives. And of course, the gunman also lost his life. So many people wondering what needs to be done in the city when it comes to gun violence. And we have seen an increase when we compare incidents to last year when it comes to homicide and so forth. So definitely, I think that's a lot of things are on the table. What this discussion looks like in the coming weeks, I think, remains to be seen. Someone asked, is there a connection to the increased police presence downtown a few weeks back around Ripley's and Rogers? And what this person is referring to is there was an alert that had gone out in the city. Now, we didn't have many details. We just knew that Toronto police had said that they had received a threat. It was unclear whether it was a credible threat or not, but they had increased security around some of the downtown landmarks. At this point, we have no information that is linked to what has happened here on Sunday. We don't know if there's any relation whatsoever. We also have heard from the Public Safety Ministry as well, because one of the questions was whether or not the shooter, Faisal Hussein, had any connections or was a national security threat. And what they responded to us was that they were not aware of him. He was not on no federal watch list. And again, we are still also trying to confirm if there was any previous interactions with police as well. So we can't say for sure that there's a connection, but there hasn't been anything to indicate that there was. But again, this is just day 2 or 3, if you will, of this investigation. It's only Tuesday. Things, of course, happened on Sunday night, and so there's still a lot that's being done, and I'm sure we'll continue to learn more. Jonathan asks, is there any talk about this being an isolated incident or part of something else? Again, I think that, for police, they believe that we do live in a safe city. Of course, there are issues with gun violence, but this being a part of a bigger issue, as far as we know, police have not indicated that this could be connected to anything else. So as I mentioned, right now they're treating it as an isolated incident, but again, we're still learning, and they're trying to learn as much about the suspect as possible, and so that will come out in the investigation. And I will say that police, since things happened on Sunday, they've been very mum on releasing too many details because they don't know exactly what happened and what led to this person to carry out this violence here in the community. So very challenging question to answer at this point, but I know, again, lots of questions still that need answers to. Zainab said, I visited Danforth last year. I really loved this place. Also, I attended Greek Festival last year. I'm so sad about the shooting. Yeah, this is a vibrant city. I will say, yesterday I was down here and this complete strip was blocked off. It was a ghost town. You could not walk down it. But today, it's slowly getting back to what we typically see, and that's lots of people out enjoying the summer, enjoying a nice drink on a patio, people getting dessert and coming together. And so we're seeing the community come out again and trying to, as I mentioned, get back to the Danforth that we know and we love. But it's very difficult because a lot of people also are coming to terms with the tragedy that happened here. And in this very spot, if you look over here, just at this memorial right here, it says Rhys on the tree. You might not be able to see it, but Rhys, of course, standing for Rhys Fallon, the young 18-year-old who lost her life. And so lots of people leaving messages, but we know that here is where people tried to help save her life. And so although this has always been a beautiful area to enjoy time with family and loved ones and celebrate the city and Greek culture, unfortunately this also is the site where people were injured and may have lost their lives. So the festival that you're referring to is coming up. It's in a couple of weeks. Question will be how many people turn out for that. But I've been hearing from a lot of people that say that they're proud of their community and they want people to know that it is safe. And there's a lot of good still in the city. So we'll be watching, of course, to see what the festival is like this year. And for people who don't know what that festival is, essentially the whole street is shut down and all of the local businesses come out. They have different booths set up. You can try food. You can enjoy dessert. Some of the businesses that were impacted by the shooting as well, popular spots during this time, and there's music, and it's just a really beautiful time in the city. So, of course, many people thinking about what those events will be like going forward. Mary, you asked about how are the other victims. Thanks for asking that question. So we know that there were 13 other people who were injured. Of course, 2 young women lost their lives, or a young girl as well. But we did get an update from a number of the hospitals that were treating victims. There were about 3 that took victims immediately. And we know one of those hospitals was able to treat, I think it was 6 out of the 7 patients that they had, and they've released 6 of those patients today. So that's a good sign. But of course, there are other people who are dealing with some more serious injuries. We don't know who some of these victims are yet. Of course, we don't have necessarily their IDs, so we haven't been able to speak with them and get an exact idea, but we know some people did have serious injuries, others not so much. But of course, there's also the trauma that many of these people experienced, and so that also will be a part of the healing process for many of those victims impacted. But that's something that we continue to check in on. We check in with the hospitals every day just to get the up-to-date information on how those patients are doing. Are the parents saying they suspected anything at all? Based on the statement that we received from the family yesterday, they did not indicate that they knew anything. They said that they were shocked, that they could not believe that their son could be capable of this type of destruction. And they also expressed their grief and their sadness for all of those people impacted. And many people that we also spoke to or we heard from this morning in various interviews within the community said that he was a quiet individual, but that he always said hi, that he was a nice guy. And so many of them as well, very shocked over what happened. But again, we're still learning a bit more about who this person is, and that's something that investigators are also trying to understand. Cam Valancourt asked, did the suspect know any of the victims? Again, at this point, we don't know. We just don't know some of those details. Also, we don't know the names of people who have been injured. We don't know what the connection is, if there is a connection, if this was, he was shooting at random groups of people. We do know that he went to several different locations. Some witnesses described him as zigzagging across the street, so it's unclear whether or not he had a clear target. But again, that's something investigators are looking closely at and are trying to piece together a very difficult conversation that's happening right now, and a very difficult situation. But again, that's something that we hope we will learn more about. But for a lot of people here, it's unclear why anyone, of course, would carry out something like that. All right. And Tammy Robinson, we'll just do a couple more questions here. Tammy Robinson asked, was he taking medication? According to his parents, they said that he had received treatment, that he had taken medication, and also had undergone some sort of therapy as well. And this has been a long time that he has been dealing with psychosis, they said, and depression. And they said that those treatment options have been unsuccessful. So that was something that the family released yesterday in their statement. Yeah. So if you guys are just wondering what I'm looking at right now, police have arrived and there was, I'm not entirely sure what's happening here, but we'll definitely keep an eye on things. But there is a large crowd gathered here. Many of the people are enjoying their time. Not sure if the police are here in relation to that argument that we saw earlier, but it seems as though things have cooled down a bit. Okay, everyone. Well, I think we've covered a lot of questions here, and we just want to say thanks for sending in your questions, and also many people who've sent their messages and condolences for the victims here. Of course, continue to follow CBC News for the latest. We've been here for since things happened, and we'll continue on with the story to bring you the latest information as it breaks. So thanks for joining us. I'm Tashauna Reid. I'm at the corner of Danforth and Logan Avenue here for CBC News.